Yo, what is up everybody? This is Jason with devslopes.com, and in this video we are going to learn how to work with images. Alright, so to start, let's go ahead and clean up some of our HTML here so we can have more focus on the image that we're going to work with. So all of this header text here at the beginning, go ahead and comment that out, and then let's take all this text down here and comment that out. Alright, so that's going to give us a lot of focus on our image. So before we start working with our image, let's check it out and see what it looks like right now. So go ahead and launch this. And right now we've got an image in the center. We're using our lion image and we still have that red dashed border around it. So cool. So now we've got all of our focus on the image. So coming back over to our text editor, what I want you to do is scroll down to the class that we put on the image, this border image here. See, and this is the image that we're going to be working with. So get rid of the border in here. And the first thing we're going to want to do is work with rounded corners. All right, so we saw our image had square corners. So to round them off, what we can do is we can add a property called border radius. All right, and the value that it's going to take here is going to be one of two numbers. It's going to take a number with a pixel, or it's going to take a number with a percentage. So for this example, let's first put in 10 pixels. All right, and what this is going to do is it's going to shave off 10 pixels around the corners of our image. All right, so let me save this. Let's come back here, and you can see that it has very softly rounded the corners here. All right, so let's work with a percentage now. Come back over to your text editor. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to first make our image a square. And to do that, I'm going to override the dimensions by giving it a fixed width of 500 pixels and a height of 500 pixels. So now we're working with a perfect square here. All right, so cool. Now what we can do here is with our border radius, we can change this from using a pixel to a percentage, and we're going to use a 50% here. And so what we're saying is we've got a square image here, and we are going to take off 50% of the corners, which is half of it. All right, and in essence, because we're working with a perfect square, it's going to make a circle. So back over to our editor here, and you can see we got a fancy looking circle. So very cool stuff. Now let's say that we want to create a thumbnail with our image. All right, so we can do that by coming right here and adding a border to this. Okay, and let's add a border of 2 pixels and make it solid, and then let's add this color of a nice light gray. All right, and in our border radius, let's go ahead and change that back to 10 pixels. All right, and the last thing to put here is this is going to put a border directly around the image, but let's create some space between the border and the image. All right, and we can do that by adding some padding. And what this is going to do is it's going to push our border slightly out and away from our image. Okay, close that off and save it, and then let's come back to here. And now you can see that we've added a really cool border to our image. And this is a very nice way that we can go ahead and create thumbnails on your web page. All right, it looks very clean, very nice, and we've got these nice softly rounded corners here. All right, so now the next thing that we want to work with is getting a responsive image. And what I mean by that is when the viewport shrinks, we want the image to stay within the viewport. So let's see what happens right now. When we shrink the browser, we can see that our image gets cut off here, right? And we have to scroll side to side. The image isn't fitting within here, and it's because we put a fixed width and height on that. So let's go ahead and fix that. I'm going to make this full screen again. Come back over to your text editor, and this time I'm actually going to go ahead and grab the image element itself. All right, and what we can do is we're going to add a maxed width to this, and we want it to be 100%. So we're telling our image element to always take up 100% of the viewport, or the element that it's in, which is the div tag. And then we're going to add a height of auto. All right, and then to help keep this in here, I'm going to also add a padding of 5 pixels, just to give us a little bit of space around the image as the viewport shrinks. So save that and come back to the browser. I'm going to refresh. And let's go ahead and shrink the browser and see what happens. So I'm going to take it here. I'm going to center this some more. And we're shrinking, 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 shrinking. And check that out. We can see that our border and our image fits within the viewport here. So by adding this max width and a height of auto and adding some space around it, it's going to keep our image within the viewport and it's not going to overflow. I'm going to full screen this. Now the last thing that I want to work with is opacity. And what that means is it's going to add a transparency to our image. So right now we've got a solid image here. Let's go ahead and add some transparency to it. So we can do this. We're going to work with the image element here, and we're going to use the property opacity. Now an opacity works between a number value of 0 and 1. So in between that, we're actually going to be using the point system. So first, let's add an opacity of 0. All right, and we're just going to put a single 0 in here. Come into the browser and you can see our image is completely gone. We've made it 100% transparent. So 0 is the lowest transparency that you can add. And if you get all the way to 0, it's going to make it completely transparent and it's going to disappear. Now come back into our text editor and let's change this a bit. Let's give it a 50% opacity, and we're going to do that by adding a 0.5 back to our browser. And you can see that our image is lighter and we've got a 50% opacity on this. And then of course, if we want to make this completely solid again, you can put the full value of 1 in here to make it a solid image again. And there you have it. All right, and the last thing that I'm going to show you, which I feel like sometimes is the most important thing, is how to center images. Now, right now, we've already got our image centered, and I'll show you why. In our text editor, at the very top, we've got a text align of center, so it's actually centering the image for us. However, let's go ahead and comment this out to remove the center. Come back to our browser, and now we can see that it's floated over to the left. And remember, the way that elements are going to stack in the browser is left to right. So what I want you to do is go ahead and inspect the element right now. And you can see that we've got this div tag. Let me pull this down just a little bit. We've got a div tag here that takes up the entire width of the viewport, right? Div tags are block elements, and it's going to go across the entire viewport. And then when we dive into our image, it's a single element that only floats over to the left here. Let me show you how we can change this and get our image to center in our div tag. So back over into your text editor, I want you to come down to the image element here, and we are going to add a display of block. All right, now I want to show you what all of a sudden happens to our image. So back over into the inspector tool, when we take our image now, let me refresh this, you can see that this orange here, this is an indicator of margin. So we've got our display of block on our div tag, but now all of a sudden, check out to the right side of our image, we have this huge open space of margin. And this is a good thing because now we're going to be able to work with this margin to center our image. So in our text editor, the last property that we can add to this is we're going to take a margin and add a value of auto. And what auto does is it takes up any extra margin that is around an element and it disperses it evenly on each side of the element. So going back to our text editor now, refreshing this, we've now got our image centered in the middle of the margin. This is an awesome way that we can center our images. So that is a wrap for this lesson. We have worked with images by adding borders, centering them, adding opacities, and creating thumbnails, and even making our images a circle. So that wraps it up. That's it. Let's move on.